Hello, everyone. I hope that this is working. Unfortunately, I cannot see the chat while I'm talking, so I'm assuming everything's going fine. And anyways, my name is Daniele, and I'm an Android engineer at Deliveroo, and I'm here to talk about how we adopted night mode in the Rider app, also called Batman mode by the product managers in my team. I'm going to go through that later. So first, a bit of background on Deliveroo. It's an online food delivery company from UK, for people who don't know it, and we operate in several markets, mostly Europe, but also Hong Kong and Singapore, Australia, and a bit of Middle East, Dubai and Kuwait. And of course, we're also in Paris and London, although we're all in lockdown at the moment. So. Yeah, and more specifically for the Rider app. So the Rider app is the app that Deliveroo provides to the riders. So riders sign up on our platform, and then we give them an app, and they use the app to do their job. So they receive orders, they need to go to the restaurant to pick up the food, and then we guide them to go to the customer and deliver the food. So at this core is basically a working tool for them to make money and for us to perform our service. This is the Rider app. So as you can see here, there are a couple of screens. There is the home screen in the middle, and then there's the login screen and the profile screen. But basically what I want to point out is that, as you can see from the home screen, is not like a normal application. Like there's a big map, a button to start going online and working, and that's basically what it is. It's a working tool. So they don't browse any list or like images or like menus. I think we have only 3 edit text in the entire application. And this is because like the use case of this application is that you have very long sessions. You can think about riders working up to 8 hours. That needs to be real time because we need to know where they are, why they're doing the job. So when, as a consumer, you place an order, for example, and then you see where is the rider on the map, is that because we are fetching the location from the rider app and sending it to the consumer app. And then we also need to have the network constantly on, the GPS constantly on. So it's quite like a very intensive application. And then this leads me to why we wanted to adopt night mode in the Rider app. Well, the first reason, like an Android last year decided to make dark mode a first-class citizen feature of the operating system, which is, of course, a good reason to adopt it. But for us, there was also another reason. Like the riders have been asking this for a long time. And this is because if you think about having a long shift during the night, like let's say from 8 p.m. until midnight, you're likely to be working on the road for such a long time. And then you don't want to have this huge wide application on your bike or motorbike all wide, so constantly on. And so this was our main reason we wanted to do this feature, which is also why our PM likes to call this feature Batman mode. For him, it's kind of like being on the road and saying the word. Right, so let's go back to the application. As I said earlier, this is like the home screen of the app, and there was the Android app. As you can see, it's much better, it's sexier, it's like, it looks more sleek, and you think about having this like during the night outside on the road, it feels much better. You can see information much clearer. Right, so I'm gonna describe how we did this transformation. So the first thing that you can think about is like, okay, that's fine. I know Android works kind of like you just have a night qualifier, just put everything in -night, and it will work. Well, that's not that easy, of course, like everything. Also, it's not just not easy because of the what you have in your application, how you develop your application since now, but also because even Android is not really clear how to support everything. Like, yes, Android 10 made the dark mode like feature of the operating system, but at the same time, before Android 10, it was not. So if you use the night qualifier, it will actually not work before Android 10. You need to do something to make it work. Second thing is that we're going to use a lot the attribute reference, and this unfortunately doesn't work across all the versions of Android, even like I think on Android API level 21, the color state list doesn't set attribute reference for your theme. And the third thing that doesn't work across all the Android operating systems is that the option to provide dark mode is actually different. Because on Android 10 is built in the system, you cannot have an option to say, I want it dark, I want it light, and I want it to follow the system, basically. But then before Ender 10, because it was not there, then you have light and dark, and then you have this by battery saver. Like I think some Pixel phone used to follow this. So when the battery save mode was on, then it was picking up the night version of your theme. But I don't think that works across all the manufacturers. And then moving more close to Deliveroo, like, yes, I work with the rider app. We want to do the night mode for riders, but actually Deliveroo, we have 3 applications. So there is application for consumers, maybe the people who knows the service are familiar with, place an order, and then there is application for the restaurant, which is like the application for tablet that we provide to them to accept order and start cooking the food. And these 3 applications are actually sharing most of the UI logic. Like we have a design system in place at Deliveroo, and we basically have a separate repository where we have all our typography, buttons, like main components, rows, and lists and stuff like that. And of course, if you want to do a night mode or rider, you need to do night mode on the design system. And so we had to do in a way that consumer restaurant could opt out, because unfortunately they were not ready to do this, but we wanted to do it right. In addition to that, we even had 3 different API levels across applications. As always, things are not that easy. And it was adding a bit of complexity as well. Next, I want to mention that it actually started from the designers, which was a very good thing for us. So a designer in my team decided it was about time to do this feature, so we went through all our design systems. As you can see from the left, we have all our buttons in our design systems. It went through and changed it, and updated them to have a dark mode version of it. And same for the components at the top, those are our rows, and those are the rows how they look like in dark, and then even all the topography and how the text across above surfaces will look like. That was very good. That meant that 70-80% of the components were already made, the basic one. Of course, there were things specifically just for the rider app, or some of the places which will have some more custom components. You still need to ask your designers how to do them, but having the basics covered, it was very good. The other thing that I want to mention, which was very important for us, is that you're most likely to have color named black or green, orange, as you can see from the second column in the table, the bottom, and then in dark mode they will actually not work. Especially if you think about black, which is your probably normal text color, primary text color, it should probably is going to be white in dark. So we also did a huge exercise of moving to semantic colors. So we should stop using any color reference in our names. So black became primary, green became success, red became error, and so on. Right, and then. But how do you actually do it? Let's say you have an application, you have 20 screens, you have an application, and you want to implement dark mode. I think there are 2 ways, major 2 ways you can do this. One is doing screen by screen. So you got your home screen and you make it dark. And then you go to your profile screen and you make it dark. But I don't think that was a good way to do it. And instead we decided to go through a different route, which was first you can do all the surfaces, big rectangle, and then you go and you do all the text appearances across the app, and then you move to the buttons, and then you move to the illustrations and icons. I think the benefit of doing this is that you kind of building up the application. So the drawback is that you're going to be in the beginning in a state where the app is halfway through. But on the other hand, because if you do one component across all of them, all the screens, then you can just review the component in isolation and then making sure that the component looks great, rather than doing one screen and then moving to another screen. And then, let's say 3 screens later, you need to change the button again because it will not look right in that screen. And also this meant that we could do design review for each step. So that's exactly what we did. We changed all the surfaces across the application. Then I was giving a build to the designer, and then he was looking at all the surfaces. He was like, yeah, we need to fix that. Oh, no, that's fine. We can move on to the next step. Right. But from development point of view, the way that we approached this was in 4 phases, let's say. So the first one was we added a few lint checks to the application and to our design system. And the lint checks are there. I'm not going to do this to them, basically to kind of know the status of the current project. Of course, if you have 5-6 years old application, and you have like several screens, like you haven't thought about doing dark mode 3-4 years ago, so you will have things which are not right. And lint can help us to go through our project and detect things which are not correct, so we know how much things we need to fix before we can finish the release of dark mode. The second point was moving to using material components library, which I'm going to go to the details later on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our rider app actually inherit all the components from the design system. So first we had to move we had to change all the design systems for night mode. And then finally we adopted the application. So yeah, let's move to the first step, which is other lint checks. So as I mentioned, is something like just check the status of your project. So lint, I'm not going to go into the details for what is lint and how to write your own custom rule. I wrote a blog post, and you can find it in the slide, so you can check how to do that, all the setup. But basically, you can just do your own detection. So lint gives you an opportunity to go through the files of your project, and you can start reporting issues if you find something that you don't like. And the checks that we wanted to add were three. So the first one is very simple. Like if you have a color defining values, you need to have a color defining night. Like if you don't, probably your color will not work dark. And then the second one, which is even more straightforward, is like if you have an hard-coded color, that doesn't sound right. And the third one, which is a bit more subtle, is like if you have a color reference, it's kind of all right, but if contains a name which is like white, red, green, as I mentioned earlier, those colors may not work in dark. So it's better to notify us this is a problem and then trying to understand if that is a correct use case. Just want to mention that the first two, we got inspiration from that Pro Android Dev article that is in the slide. Right, so how do you do this? Okay. So with lint, you can even write tests. So the first thing you can do is just let's pretend that we have a missing night color issue, something that lint can spawn, and then we define two files. The first one is the color file, and as you can see, you have a test files class that you can use to simulate to have like a file in your project. So in this case, I have a res/values/colors.xml. So this is normal colors definitions, and then I have an XML with resources. Inside I have a color primary, and a color primary is slightly dark. Right, and then I have a color night file, which is similar, but instead is in the night qualifier, and then does only have the color primary. So we know that our potential rules should basically report an error and say, hey, color primary is slightly dark, should have a version in night. So how do you do this? So lint basically gives you, there are a few classes that you can extend, and then it gives you a way to either like go through your files project or your XML project. In this case, we're using a resource XML detector. And when you extend the class, you can override a couple of methods, and then you can visit your own things. So basically, it gives you a chance to look inside the XML. In this example, you can use visit element, and then this is basically going through each element of your XML file. And here I'm saying regular colors, which is basically a map of all your colors, define your normal one, and the location where is the color. And then I define a list of my more colors. When I visit each element, I can just check what's the folder configuration. So if the folder configuration is default, means it's like our normal res/values/colors.xml, and I'm just gonna register that in our map. So I'm gonna say, hey, this is the attribute name, which is like color primary, let's say, and this is the location. And then if it's night, I'm just gonna say, hey, I visited this color name in the night mode qualifier. And then you can also even override these methods, which is get applicable elements. And then basically here you're just saying to our lint check, look, I'm just interested in color. So don't give me anything which is like, I don't know, layout, drawables, everything that I don't care, because I just want to do this for colors. And then finally, you can override another method, which is after check each project. Basically, this is a callback that you can use for when the lint has gone through all your files. And then here you can do you have like kind of a last chance to do a detection. And you go through all your regular colors, and then you're gonna basically just check, do I have the same color in the 9 mod colors? If not, if it's not there, then I just report a violation. Please pay attention that we need to save the location, because when you report an issue through the context of lint, you need to pass the issue name, but you also need to pass the location. Basically, it's the file where the color was missing. Right, and then if you do this, of course, you will get, when you run lint, you will check your files, but you will also work in Android Studio. So if you have a color that doesn't have a version in night, you will start having this warning in Android Studio as well. It's quite handy. Right, let's move to the second one. So this one, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to have hard-coded colors anymore in our XMLs. So you can, again, have a content file. In this case, we are just pretending to have a res/layout/toolbar.xml, and then you can see inside you have a background and foreground, which have 2 random colors. And we are expecting that at those 2 lines, we should report a violation saying, hey, you should avoid using direct colors. And this is actually much easier. So instead of doing visit element, here we need to do visit attributes. So this is because, like, if you think about it, now we are not interested in the content of the element, but here we're interested in the content of the attribute. Think about view, and the attribute is background and foreground. So here you can use this get applicable attributes just to return a list of attributes that you're interested in. So yeah, background, foreground, source, whatever, like everything that's, you're going to put a color inside. And then you can override another callback, which is visit attribute. And then here you have a chance to look inside the attribute value. And it's pretty easy. Like if you start with hash, then you're not either using a color reference, which will start with a color, or using an attribute reference, which will start with a question mark. And you can straight away report a violation. So here actually, it's slightly different from the previous one. Here we don't need to wait to go through all the files of your project like we did for the previous one. Here we just know straight away this is wrong. So you can just use the context to report a violation with the right location. Right, the third one is fairly similar. Again, you have a view, we have a toolbar, and then there's a background, the foreground inside. Here, like, we don't have a direct color, but actually we have a reference. So we have add color/white, add color/red. And again, we want this to report the violation. You can do basically with the same thing. So you have your get applicable attributes, again, everything that can accept a color, and then you have your visit attribute. Here, instead of checking if it starts with hash, you just check if the value is one of the one defined in the list. If you think about here, the list looks a bit weird, but it's because there is a mixture of things like white, orange, red, which are like generic color, which probably will not work in dark. But there are also some colors that were specific to the design system. So our green of the brand green of Deliveroo is teal, and then there's burger, like the aubergine. There are some colors that we used to use across the application. They also, those would probably not look correct in dark. And again, if it's the value of the attribute is in that list, then you just straight away report a violation. Right. Now, if you look back to the design system, like the good thing about the lint checks is that you can actually add them in the design system. So then both referrer and consumer will ever be available for them, even though they probably will not use dark mode right now. But the day that they decided in the team to adopt dark mode, then most of the work in the design system is already done, and there are also the lint checks already available. Right. So now the second steps of our journey was adopting the material components library. So for the people who don't know what it is basically a drop-in replacement of the Android design support library. So the idea is that basically Google wrote the support library to fully implement the material design specification. And you will think about why would I do this? Like, there are a few reasons. I think the first one is that it came out with a day-night theme straight away. So you can use theme.materialcomponents.daynight. Then you have your no action bar, dark action bar, the usual. But there was a good thing to start with, and also because there is an extensive documentation on GitHub. So if you look at the link at the bottom, there are a lot of documentation about support dark, how to implement each component. So it's way much easier to start working with it. Also, it's alpha. Sorry, it's released since the beginning of February. We actually started this process at the end of last year, and the library was still a bit in beta. But it's Google, and everything is always a bit beta. And the other good thing about the material components library is that it's on GitHub, and you can just search on GitHub. So if you have, you need to implement a toggle button or a button, whatever, anything component, you can just go there and just to understand which theme attribute is using. You can just look at the source code. So it's much easier. You don't need to go to Stack Overflow and find some random answers about to tint a button somewhere in a dialog, for example. Right. So the way that the library works is that it's supposed to use a subset of the most compact familiar attributes. So the one that we are all familiar with at the top, color primary, color secondary, color background, those are still supported. But then on top of them, the material components library is defining their own attributes. So you have the color surface. Surface is a new thing, kind of like this is especially for dark mode. You can think about surface as something that is above your main background. And then you have the color on surface, color on background, color on secondary. So there are a lot of attributes here about writing things, tinting things above some surfaces or some other colors. And this is good. I think this gives you a good starting point if you want to implement a theme that supports day-night. But of course, at Deliveroo, we have a massive design system, so we ended up to rewriting some of those attributes. So the way you can define your attributes is to create an app.xml file in your values folder. Here you can see we have a UI kit theme. UI kit is the name of our design system, and then you have those are all the attributes of our theme. So we have the main color, the surface color, some brand color, error color, and then the same for our text, our colors. So basically here is where we define all our attributes. And the way you use them is that you define your own style, which is theme, UI kit theme, and then here you can override them. But first I want to mention one thing here. So as I said earlier, we had to support both a day-night theme and a non-day-night theme, because consumer restaurant apps which are using this theme were not ready to do that. So the trick that we did to make it kind of a seamless without having two completely different themes with two complete sets of attributes is that we made the UI kit theme, the basic one, extending from theme.materialcomponents.light, which means this doesn't support day-night at all. And then our UI kit theme.day-night is actually tricking. It's tricking the system because our parent is using theme.materialcomponents.day-night. So we are basically switching below the parent, and then actually UI kit.day-night is gonna be available for day-night. And then both of them I'm gonna define the attributes that we specify in the ads.xml. And then here's the other trick. For the normal theme that doesn't support day-night, you just define your background main color, background surface color, text color primary, or your own attributes. Here you're gonna put the target color straight away. So your main color is gonna be anchovy 5, the surface is gonna be white, the text color primary is gonna be black. But then in day-night, here you, instead of putting a direct color, you're gonna specify some color reference, which then it will have a two different color. So let's go through this again. So you have your kit theme and your kit theme.day-night. They both have a text color primary attributes, and the normal one, your kit theme, will reference a black 100. Right, and then the day-night version of it will actually use a color reference called text color primary. And if you look about the text color primary, the way it works is that it will have a color defined in the normal one, which will have the same as the normal theme that doesn't support day-night. And then for the night version of that color, you will have it alpha 87. So just to summarize how this kind of is picked out from the system. So if you use the normal theme that doesn't support day-night, you will have black across day and night. And then if you use the day-night version of it, you will actually pick it up the white alpha 87 when it's in night. But to do this, you need to use the attribute reference. So if you look at the usage below, here you're basically saying this text color or this text appearances is going to use a question mark path / text color primary. And that's an attribute you define in your theme. And then based on the theme, so if it's your theme or your theme.day-night, you can just pick it up the right color. So potentially in the future, if you want to move from one to the other, you just switch the name of the theme, and then you will start picking up the right value out of your theme. So let's go through this again for the background, for example. So again, you have your UI key theme, UI key theme.day night, and then you have background my color, background surface color. As you can see, the one that doesn't support day night, those are kind of are coded to be white and unshowified. But then for our UI key theme.day night, we actually using color reference, main and surface color, and those are actually the value for normal and night. So that's how the team would decide which main and which surface color to provide to your application. And this is kind of a summarize how the surface will look like when you're gonna use one theme or the other across day and night. The other thing that I want to mention about the material components library is that if you need to implement elevations, it's quite tricky for dark, because if you look at this GIF, like the elevation in dark, it doesn't make any sense. There is no shadow because everything is black behind, right? So the way that works is that if you look at the component that is at the center in dark, is actually becoming lighter. And then that's how you should implement this, the elevation. And then if you use the material components library, this is already built in. So all the floating action button, all the like card views, toolbar, all of those things are already following this. So you don't need to implement that from scratch. Next, we move to do the typography. So we did all the background with surface and the main color, and then we went to typography. So this is our UI kit component browser library. So you can browse all our design system, and those are all our typography. So you can see there's both medium, headings, and stuff like that. And to do this, it was fairly easy. So we did already have text appearances everywhere in our application, which was a good thing. So if you look at the one at the top, so we used to have UI key.text appearances.body.medium.teal, and then of course teal now doesn't make any sense anymore, because in dark what's teal 110 probably will not work. So as we did with the designer to go through all the colors and change those black, teal, green, white to be semantic, then we did the same here. So our old text appearances moved from being teal to being action, or the one below, green to be success, orange to be intention. And then the value is actually now not using a color straight away, but is using our theme attributes. So if you just reference those attributes, then you don't need to change anything. If tomorrow you need to change your success color, you just change the value in your theme, and then your text appearances will just use the attribute reference from your theme, which is so good. So it's kind of like a big find or replace. Because if you think about the usage of those text appearances, let's say you have a text view, you used to have key.text appearances.body.medium.gray. Well, now gray is making sense. You know, it's been renamed to be secondary. So what you need to do is to go through all your project files and then just change the name to be secondary, which also means that you ended up with a magic like massive PR of 1,000 files just because you have changed the gray to be secondary, the green to be a success, and etc., etc. Your colleagues will love it. Next were the buttons. So again, this is our browsing component hub, and those are the buttons on the left are for the normal theme, and then those are the buttons, and now they look like in dark. And buttons for us were a bit more difficult, just because they are actually not really buttons, you know, in the sense that they are just a frame layout with a text view, a background, and an icon, because we also support icon inside. And so basically it's done through code and not through XML. So this is our enumeration for the type of buttons that we have. It's the normal, primary, and the secondary and tertiary, and then all the alternatives, plus we have some custom plus theme attribute for some specific feature of the applications. And the way that it works is based on the type, we load the right drawable, which is this, like, for example, for the background. So if it's the type of the button is primary, then we just load the button background primary from our drawable folder straight away. And then similarly, our text color is actually using some color reference, and then those are all color state list, and then based on the type, we are loading the right one. Which leads me to the other thing that we had to do is that because for day and night you want to have two different sets of color, but you don't want to go through your code and say, hey, if this is dark, use this color, or if it's that dark, if it's not dark, use the other color. But we just want to make the code completely ignoring the fact that we support both. We just went through our apps, draws XML, and we defined additional attributes for our theme. So here, for example, we define all the attributes for the background button primary, the background button primary descriptive, and so on. Same for our outline. So this is like the border of the button, and then the text color of the button. And basically, we are delegating all the decision about how to theme our primary, secondary buttons based on the theme's values of those attributes. So here it works, how it works for our UI kit theme, which is our main basic theme, which doesn't support day and night. We just basically are coding the color of those background to be teal, red, and chocolate. And then for, again, the same trick, for our day night theme, we're basically using a color reference. And those color references are going to have two different values based on normal and night. Right, so now if we look back to our background, like our drawable for the background of the button, say here we have two shapes based on the state enabled. Here we're basically using an attribute reference. As I said earlier, we want to make the buttons completely ignoring if it's day and night. So the way you do this is just always using the attribute reference of the theme. You're basically delegating all the values to be defining your theme. And it's all good, but then of course this will not work in API 11.19. So the attribute reference is not supported in selectors in API 11.19. And this is where we had to do like kind of a decision. How do we want to support this? And to be fair, like we looked at the data of our users, and then very few writers were using API 11.19. So we decided to not support dark mode for that. And the way to do this is basically we change the button background primary to actually use a reference color, HOVNT. But as I mentioned earlier, you should not do this, right? But that's where we said, okay, this is only for API 11.19. We know we don't support dark mode, so please, lint, don't notify me that this file is wrong, that I know that it's wrong. Because at the same time, we can define our own values /v21, which we know is going to work. And then here we're going to use the attribute reference. So if we are above 21, we have dark mode available, and then we use the attribute reference. Next were the illustrations and icons. So as you can see here is the profile screen of the application. If you can reuse the same illustration. It may work across the two. In this example, both screens have the same illustrations, literally the same. If it doesn't, then you can just easily just put in your night qualifier version of drawable, and then you can have two different illustrations across the two. Icons actually were a bit more tricky instead for us. This is because we don't ship the icons in the project by itself, but we have a dependency to a repo which contains all the icons, which means that they all come from the repo as like. So we need to theme them programmatically. There's no other way. And the way that we used to do this is like adding an extension function for context called HoldColor, and then here you can just pass a color res, and then you use your context compa class to load the color. From the usage, which is the line at the top, you just say, hey, can you drawable compa, can you set the tint for this drawable loading this color white? Again, you should never use .color.white. Like you should use the theme of your the reference of your attribute theme. So we create a new one, which we actually call it TeamColor. Here, please pay attention that we are actually passing an attribute res. We are not passing a color res anymore. And here we are using the theme to resolve the attribute for that value. And then the usage is pretty similar. So you do use your drawable compat, those same tint as before, but you pass a drawable that you want to tint, but instead of using context.color, use the new one, context.TeamColor. And to kind of know how far we were to do this migration, we basically deprecated the first one, because as I said earlier, we should never use colorless anymore in your code if you can. Right. Next thing were the dialog. So the material components library is a very good library, as I mentioned, but it does something weird to your project probably, is that they have their own material alert dialog. So if you use a normal alert dialog builder, the one that comes from the system, it will actually not tint it. So the theme of material component doesn't tint your alert dialog. So if you start using a lab, you try to run a dialog, you will see they will not look right. Luckily, we used to have Anchor, and so we used to have this kind of interface to create an alert, and we basically, what we did was like, we don't want to move to change the code again, because we would really like the DSL from Anchor. And then so we basically just rewrote it. So if you look up here, that this is now shipped in our code, and we are basically rewriting the entire Anchor DSL instead of that uses a material dialog builder rather than using alert dialog builder. And then, which was very nice, because then it meant that we could just swap the input. So we didn't actually have to change any code, which was quite a nice plus. Another mention of the maps, it's very easy actually. So on Google Maps, you can use set map style and load a raw resource style, and then the file just live in your raw folder. So you can just have a raw -night, and then you have a different scheme. So you can then load different scheme across day and night. That was very easy. Finally, you also need to provide an option for users to opt in on features. So I mentioned earlier that Android 10 does support night qualifier straight away. So if you put something in night, it will actually pick it up. But of course, this doesn't work before Android 10. And also, what if you want to give an option to your users to disable the night qualifier straight away? And so that's why you should have in your system settings, like in the settings of your application, something where you can set your own theme. So user can be freely to make a choice about how to use the dark theme or not. So this is where I mentioned, like, you should have on and off and use system settings from Android 10, but before Android 10, you should have on, off, and use battery saver mode option. And the way you can set the night mode, so if it's on, off, or like following the system or the auto battery, is through the app component delegate. So you can just set the full night mode, and then you can just put the flag on to load it. If you do this, like, the app will start itself and it will load the theme straight away. There's nothing else you can do. Right, so now I will maybe start talking about the challenges and tips that we encountered. So if you think about, we did this over the course of 3 weeks, more or less, because we have like a 2 weeks sprint planning and release cycle, and then we basically skipped one, and then we did in over like more than 2 weeks. But if you think about this, is like a lot of things that's going on that you need to change across the application. So it's not an easy task. So the first challenge is that there's nothing really that you can do about this, but you will end up with a very lot of big PRs. Like, you're basically changing all the colors name, you're changing all the attribute reference, you need to change the code programmatically to start using the attribute reference there as well. And then you have a lot of like run and then check the icons, it will not work, you need to go back. So it's very hard to avoid those. And for this reason, I think we decided that it was better to actually prioritize QA over PRs. Like, yes, we still did code review, but it's very hard to do code review when you have 1,005 changes and they are mostly UI related. So there's not much logic going on. It's more like making sure that you're using the right text color, you're using the right icon, you're not forgetting to tint the color. Like, if you actually run the app and you can look at it, then it makes much faster. So even devs were actually doing QA rather than just pure PR. Like, we have a few instances where like running the application and all the icons in the toolbar were like not visible. Like, it takes you literally like, as soon as you start the app, you will see that there's a problem. If you try to look at the code, maybe the code was right. So if you look at the toolbar was right, and you look at the code was right, and then the issue was that the attribute reference in the team or the design system was wrong. And then it's much harder to follow the entire picture of how it works. The other thing that I want to mention that was helping for us is like do a lot of design review with your design. Like don't try to implement all of it, then like, oh, this is done. You go to the designer, like, can you do a review? Because most likely there are going to be a lot of small things which is going to be wrong, and a lot of things that may need some tweakings, and then there are other things that you forgot about it, and then I will suggest to try to do more iteratively. So as I mentioned earlier, like just do all the surfaces and then look with your designer. Like we have, for us, like we have a map screen as a home screen. We straight away when we start looking at the surfaces, all the surfaces above the map were wrong. Like we had to go and change all the colors. And like if you go to like wait until the end, then you're gonna wait to know that something is wrong in your home screen. So I think it's much better to try to be more iterative with your design. The other thing that I suggest to do is that you can actually start collecting some data about how many users have 9 mode on your phone, like on their phone. So you can use this flag from your context of the sources to know which one of these is actually using if the 9 mode is on, and then you can start gathering some data. For example, those are the values that we have in our application at the moment. And think about that, we never like announced the feature, even not even an email. So this is all organic growth of the feature. And finally, I want to just say that the best part of all of this journey was that finally riders got this feature and they were super happy about it, which make it like really, really worth it. Thank you. I'm going to upload the slides in the virtual conference website, and yeah, I think there is a Slack channel where you can just ping me or like on Twitter, whatever you prefer. Let me see if there are questions. Yeah, so there is a question about any tips for when you have to use colors programmatically. Yeah, so I can maybe go back to the slide. Yeah, so this slide. So I think programmatically, you need to try to move away from colors res and start using attribute res. So you should try to start using things like this. So where you set the theme color rather than using the color. So you load the attribute from your theme and then you put that in your code. One thing that I want to mention, I think you should, we thought about this, but we decided it was a bad idea, which is like having a flag somewhere in your application that says, oh, if it's dark or not. And I think this will lead to a lot of problems down the line. Like you don't want to start duplicate code or like duplicate logic just because you need to have the flag on and off. I think it would be better to just delegate the team to decide which color is correct at any given time. Right, I think that was the only question. As I said, like I have the office hours open until 4:30, and then I'm gonna monitor the Slack and Twitter. Thank you.